Say, do you remember The Fugitive, that old 60s television series about the doctor who's convicted of a murder that he didn't commit and then goes on a long search for the one-armed man constantly trying to evade police? Starred David Janssen, or Jansen, I guess. I don't know how his last name's pronounced. Not ringing any bells? Not at all? Well, I'm sure you probably have seen the 1993 film starring Harrison Ford. Yeah, yep, see, I can see you nodding, because you've probably either have saw it in the theaters when it came out, or have seen the numerous TV showings. Now, I'm mentioning The Fugitive because I get the feeling that the people making this film are kind of hoping that history will repeat itself, where a studio will take a television series that was successful enough to have multiple seasons that not many people really remember anymore, make it as a movie starring a popular star, and then hopefully the film will overtake the series in terms of notoriety. Will that last part of history repeat itself? The Equalizer is based on a 1980s television series that follows a retired CIA operative who decides to use his skill set and his anonymity to help people who can't really be helped by the system. As such, the story of this film comes across as a mixture of Die Hard and Death Wish if they were both being directed by Luc Besson. That said, the film has a really slow start, almost to the point where you're thinking you're watching a completely different film entirely. On top of that, the film tries to work in some pointlessly and desperately artistic shots, as if they were lifting shots from films like The Godfather or Road to Perdition, and expecting them to have some sort of dramatic weight, when they really don't, and just clash with the rest of the film stylistically. When it comes to the action, when it finally comes around, it kind of starts with a pre-calculated action scene, kind of in the vein of Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes films with Robert Downey Jr. The only difference is that I think this film actually did it a little bit better, because we don't really see Denzel Washington's character go through all these motions in slow motion before he does them in fast motion. We just see that he's calculating, taking note of what weapons each person has, what stuff he can use, and then you just see him kind of put it into action as he times himself. You see that he's calculating, but you don't have it explained to you. That said, it's after that point that the action just gets sillier and sillier and sillier. I mean, it got to the point where I was literally trying not to laugh out loud in the middle of the theater, although a lot of people in the audience at the showing I went to were laughing out loud in the middle of the theater, because really the action just gets so cliched and contrived that it's just ridiculous and hard to take seriously. It's not just bordering on 80s action silliness, this dives headfirst into it by the very end of the film. It's because of the silliness that some of the story elements just feel out of place. They clash stylistically with the cheesy 80s style action of the remaining 2/3 of the film. I understand you're trying to give your main character a believable reason to drop his nice guy facade. I can even applaud the fact that they kind of make this whole cold, calculated killer side of him almost like a separate personality that he has to keep reined in and keep in check when he's around normal people. I can applaud that they went to the lengths to show that, but it's hard to take some of the very serious, very dramatic stuff seriously when your climax is set in a Home Depot with DIY booby traps. That may seem like a spoiler, but trust me, that's the simple version. From a technical standpoint, I've already talked about some of the needlessly artistic shots in the earlier parts of the film, but there are some shots later on in the film that are actually pretty cool to look at, especially when you have the main character who uses his smartphone for a good chunk of stuff, whether it's taking incriminating video or incriminating photos, and even just using the flashlight on his smartphone to intimidate people. You get some pretty cool lighting effects that actually add a nice mood to certain scenes. As for the acting, Denzel is pretty much being Denzel here. I mean, he turns in a likable performance, but it's pretty similar to a lot of performances he's given in the past. As for the supporting cast, I couldn't really get a good read on their acting. It's not that their performances are necessarily phoned in, it's just that, well, it's just that they don't really have that many moments where their acting can really shine, save for Martin Sokas, and I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. Now, Martin Sokas kind of plays, for lack of a better term, the main villain of the film. And I can understand they're kind of trying to set up a bit of a Moriarty Holmes thing of someone who's normally in control kind of meeting his match in the main character who's able to kind of outthink and outmaneuver him. And there actually are some nice subtle moments that the actor gets to kind of show some chops. However, there were also some moments where Sokas was going a little over the top, in my opinion. Overall, if you're expecting a cheesy action film, you won't be disappointed. You may be off-put by the first act for a little while, but for the most part, you'll have a good time. If you're expecting anything more than that, however, you're gonna be disappointed, kind of like how I was. This is partially due to the fact that the trailers were a bit misleading. I mean, yeah, it's an action film, but they make you think it's gonna be more of a contemporary designed action film, but this film kind of more falls in the vein of 80s action films, almost like Cold War spy thriller sort of action films. I wouldn't recommend paying full price for this. It's definitely not worth seeing in IMAX, even though they're trying to release it in IMAX. I'd wait for it to come to the dollar theater, or maybe just seeing it at a matinee. Don't pay more than $5 or so to see this film. All of that said, I give The Equalizer a 3.5 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.